Hi there, I'm Chris Devine, and this is my review of the Sterling by Music Man Sabre electric guitar. When a manufacturer offers up a lower priced import instrument that's usually based off of an American model, the import seems to get streamlined for costs. Simply put, the components are often inexpensive. The electronics are usually simpler. And the design features found in those higher end USA models are usually skipped over. But Ernie Ball Music Man took their Sabre guitar and made a sterling version of it that maintains higher end features and components. Now this is a Natoa body. It's a hardwood that's found in Southeast Asia. It's kind of like a mahogany. There's also as you can see here, and also some on B shots I'll show you here as well. The blue burst finish is on a flame maple veneer. It's quite striking finish. The back is also a very dark blue stain. It's not black. So it really pops in sunlight, and I'll try to get some photos of that so it really does, you can see what it really does. It's got a really nice grain pattern in there, and it's very subtle and very modern. Now this body is also paired to a roasted maple neck and happens to have a truss wheel adjustment at the butt of the neck, which makes it so easy for any possible adjustments that are needed. There's also, again in the back, a 5-bolt ergonomic neck joint, and this is amazing for offering access to those upper areas of the fretboard. This type of thing is usually not seen in an import instrument. I would have assumed it would have just been similar, like the block, normal bolt-on boxy design that is usually found on a lot of import instruments. And speaking of fingerboards and fingerboard access, this is a rosewood fingerboard with 22 stainless steel frets and a 25.5-inch scale length. The fretwork is excellent. As we've gone through a lot of changes here in the temperature in New England for a lot of humidity really drying out, this is a really stable neck. This has proven to be quite impressive overall as we've gone from some more drier temperatures and less humidity into these winter months. The fretwork is, again, absolutely wonderful. The shape of the neck is a modern C shape and has some girth to it, so it's not kind of like a vintage C shape. There's a 12-inch radius on there, and as usual for Ernie Ball Music Man, the Sterling has the 4+2 design for the headstock, and it also happens to have locking tuners. At the other end, this is a modern 2-post tremolo. It has a pop-in arm, which is great. It doesn't have to be threaded in there. It's got a little grub screw to hold the arm in with some tension if you choose to do so. It also happens to have some very nice milled, it looks like steel, I don't know if they're steel, but they're metal saddles that look quite nice and very sturdy as well. And the pickups are absolutely amazing. These are the modern versions of the Fishman Fluence humbuckers. They're active and they are directly mounted to the body. We have a volume and a tone, as well as a three-way blade switch. And for added tones, the controls are push-pulls on both the volume and tone. It can go into single coil mode, and it also goes into engaging a second voice that comes with the Fluence pickups. Now, right out of the box, this guitar came out absolutely amazing. It was set up with a set of 10s, and again, amazing to just open up the gig bag and just have the guitar just feel perfect. No need for setup or anything like that. Again, I've made mention of the neck. It's silky smooth feel. The roasted maple neck is really kind of amazing. If you've never played one, it's not snake oil. It's not hype. This is kind of it's a really, really nice feeling neck, and it looks phenomenal as well. And if you haven't experienced a guitar with stainless steel frets, this may ruin you for other instruments. The feel of the fingerboard, the frets, and the neck shape, it really makes for a wonderfully modern neck that is quite, I'd say, close to perfect. The bridge on this guitar is not the same that's found on the Ernie Ball Music Man USA siblings. But there's no issues to be had. It works fine. There's no issues with tuning as far as that goes. So it felt great. It was smooth, no problems whatsoever. Body-wise, this is a traditional S-type shape, but the contours are not as exaggerated. And it's still very comfortable, but also very modern looking with the appearance for the maple top and the no pick guards or anything like that. It's really minimal, but also just what you need. And, but it looks absolutely wonderful in that. Again, this is kind of a modern version of like a super Strat. So this is really kind of a great thing if you want to try to check one of these out. Getting into the pickups and digging in there, the Fishman Fluence pickups are a really great pairing for this guitar. Again, a modern feel. The pickups are very tight. They're very focused. There's a wonderful response to them. Very snappy, but they still feel natural. It's kind of like you get the feel of a modern traditional pickup without any of the inconsistencies and without any of the sterility of what I would normally consider active pickups. So these are definitely kind of more balanced in that area of being modern but not too sterile or synthetic. That's the best way to describe it. It's a more balanced response. The big test I found was putting the bridge pickup in a clean setting and just strumming a chord, and it was really It wasn't spiky or harsh. Sometimes on a bridge pickup, you just put on a clean sound, especially a bright clean sound, and it just it's almost like way too much treble. It's just all over the place. It sounds like a bunch of sheet metal being dropped on a floor. So this was really a whole different experience. It wasn't spiky or harsh. It was very full. It was bright and it was punchy. And the neck pickup is really warm and has a nice bottom end without any flubbiness. And when you pull into the volume control for single coil mode, it doesn't react like a typical passive coil, the passive single coil mode. I've had a lot of pickups where I have the humbuckers are split into a tap or a single coil mode, and what sometimes you get is you get a loss of unity gain, maybe a little bit of noise, and you kind of get a single coily sound, but it's a little bit more exaggerated. This is not like that. Because these are active pickups, there's no change, there's no hum. So that's the first thing. It goes into a single coil mode. It really that's the first thing you know. So that's a kind of off-putting if you're used to that. But the second thing is it kind of really didn't feel like a coil tap. It felt more like a pass filter where it was rolling off a lot of the bass response, and it just added a little bit of a smoother feel. It won't outspank a telly or outstrat a Strat, but it offers up a little bit more clarity, which is a nice feature to have. The second voicing on the pickups is engaged by pulling up on the tone control. It's got a little bit of a warmer sound. It's depending on how you have your amp set up and things like that, it's really going to affect how much of that comes through. I found it to be just kind of like a nicer, just a different version of that. The EQ is a little different, and it was nice to be able to just go to that. When you felt like, oh, maybe I want to have a little bit of a crispier, more vintagey type. It's not really vintagey because it really isn't vintage, but it was really a nice tone to have that didn't go too far out of its lane. So that was a nice way to go with it. I ran this through a variety of amps, a lot of amp simulators, plugins, a variety of different types of ways you would plug a guitar into something these days. And the overall sounds are certainly modern flavored. And I kind of would have to say this is kind of like a high definition guitar. It's a guitar in HD. The active pickups certainly contribute to that, but the playability and really adds to the modern response. The drive sounds I really liked with this. It was wonderful. The track I did in the beginning of this video, I did the rhythm guitar parts that were the overdub with this guitar with a clean setting. So it was this guitar on its own. And I went through the different modes in different parts of that song with different versions of the pickup settings. And it was nice. You could just kind of add a little bit or take a little bit away. And it wasn't anything too far out of the ordinary. I never really felt like it was like missing something. And I'll say this, there's also something I want to point out on this guitar is if you're a player that favors like maybe like vintage instruments or vintage style instruments, a lot of times, I know a lot of players go, I like to try something out, and they see a lot of the newer modern style instruments that have been really making the scene. And maybe they're not into an extended range fretboard, or maybe they're not into a headless design or something like that. Well, this is kind of a really great in-between spot. It's a traditional feel and a very familiar feel, but the overall response is a lot more closer to what, again, a modern guitar is, but it's got all that ability to still feel familiar, but yet sound a little bit more crisper, clearer, a little bit more well-defined. And it's not like it's being beholden to things of the past. So if you're a player that maybe goes through a lot of processors and things like that, maybe you've got a quad cortex or something like that, this could really be something that might be up your alley when you're really looking for something that's a modern instrument, but yet, again, not too far out into the territory where the guitar doesn't really look like a guitar anymore. I will say again, like the split coil mode on this wasn't really super present, but does it's like a high pass filter. But yeah, it didn't really need a lot of EQ adjustments. A lot of times when you also go into switching with coil tap modes, sometimes your amp sound sometimes might not pair with it. So sometimes it just kind of prevent that, even just that idea of it being so far out of what you're used to compared to a humbucker. This stays in its lane. It really does. So that really there's no compensation for every time you make an adjustment on this instrument. And at no point since I've been playing this thing have I thought of this is an import instrument. It hasn't. It's always it feels, sounds, and responds like an amazingly well sorted guitar. And this is definitely resetting the bar for me on what import guitars really can do, which is amazing. They've come a long way over the years, and this is one where I'd say the import isn't lacking anything that the USA model has, but this is kind of like the USA models are wonderful, but this is something where the value is really translated back to the player. You know, that makes it really a great guitar. Now, there is one complaint I do happen to have for this instrument, and it's this instrument in particular. This is our test guitar, and I'm going to show you some photos there. There's a slight issue with the finish. Now, as you can see, it looks like there's a little bit of a binding around the edge here. It's really not a binding. It's more like edging. It is a bare area of wood that's been sanded back to give the appearance of a binding, like you would have, like the traditional binding that you would find on a lot of instruments. And this is a blue burst finish, and it goes from blue to a darker blue, essentially, as it goes through the darker blue, almost black, as far as that goes. And it appears that during some of the masking process to give you this edge, this edging, if you will, it wasn't really done properly. There's a little bit of bleed that kind of comes through onto this edging right at the top of it. It's a bit inconsistent, but it does go around a majority of the edge. About, I would say, probably quite a bit of it. It's just a really rough tape line, essentially. And there's also one little area here in the cutaway, in that same area, that's a little discolored, and it looks like there's a grain filler was applied. It's a bit of a bummer, especially considering that this instrument was sorted out so well, and it's a bummer, you know. But here's an interesting point: Sterling instruments are primarily sold through online retailers. I don't believe any brick and mortar store carries these new. And all these online retailers are very reputable, and they have some very good return policies. I actually purchased an instrument myself from Sweetwater, not this guitar. I purchased a guitar from Sweetwater earlier this year, and they do go through their instruments thoroughly to make sure that the instruments they're getting from the manufacturers meet their quality standards before they get to you. So they try to prevent anything like that. I believe this guitar is probably a demo guitar or a sample guitar that's meant to go out to reviewers like myself. And sometimes those are early in the production run, and this may be something that didn't get looked at as detailed. It's a bummer for sure. But I've also done a bit of research on these guitars. I've checked out some other reviews. I've looked at a lot of high-res photos that some reviewers have posted, and they haven't made any mention of any finish issues that I've talked about here. They've taken care of those, and there's no issue with any of that binding or edging. So I'm going to say this would not prevent me from buying an instrument. It keep me aware of it when it does arrive, and I would definitely give, obviously, when you buy a new guitar, you give it the once over, maybe the twice over, or the third time over, and you make sure that you're really not getting anything with any issues that could possibly be an issue down the line. So but I think this is something that is specific to this instrument, but I do want to make mention of it in full transparency. And that, that your retailer should sort you out if you do find anything that's not up to snuff. And, as I mentioned, this is like an important instrument that doesn't need to have anything done to it. I mean, that's the crazy part. That one little issue they've had, everything else in this has been so well sorted. It's not a really modern, aggressive body style. The pickups are very clear. They're articulate. The styling is something that it feels like a guitar. It doesn't feel like a space-age battle axe. A lot of times when people get an import guitar, the first thing they go through and they upgrade the pickups, they upgrade the bridge, they have to take it and get it set up. And there's a lot of, while you are saving money, getting the import version, all that extra stuff you would have to do to another instrument, well, you don't have to do that here. It's all done. It's sorted. Right out of the box. Get this, grab yourself a nice strap and a cable and whatever amp you're running into, you're good to go. You shouldn't have any problems with it whatsoever. So I gotta tell you though, this guitar, I would give, if without the finish issues, I would give this guitar a 5 out of 5 stars. This guitar, I'll give it a 4 out of 5 because of the finish issue. But that's also only thing I'd say on this particular guitar itself. The street price is $14.99 as of this recording. So the price, it's a little high for an import guitar, but it has everything done to it. And you're not really missing out on anything. You're getting a great value in the complete package and the instrument as a whole. So be well worth checking out if you're into a modern guitar that isn't too crazy and has some really wonderful pickups and a wonderful feeling neck. So if you get a chance, check one of these out and check out performermag.com for more reviews. Thanks a lot. Take care.